welcome to another installment of our audition preparation series. And our guest today is the second oboe and English horn player of the Jacksonville Symphony, Danny Rios. Hey Danny, how are you?
Yeah, happy to be here.
So we're talking about Beethoven's Third Symphony, the last movement of Beethoven's Third Symphony, very famous symphony, turning point symphony for him. So it's a really exciting excerpt. Here it is. This one is a lot of fun to play, but there are a few traps we can fall into.
Yeah, the Third Symphony is just a great piece in the history of all of music, and it's a really particularly great piece to get to play as an oboist. You know, there are famous solos in most of the movements, and this one's an interesting solo in that it's really important to play it simply. There's a long way to go in the movement. This is the first entrance of the winds in the movement. Prior to this, it's just been the strings. So it's really important to play this kind of very simply, very sweetly, and for it to be pretty much totally in time until the measure before the fermata that you have. You can take a little bit of time, but otherwise pull out the metronome, practice with the metronome, stay totally in time.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the first iteration of this theme in the movement. It's easier said than done, right, Danny, to play something really simply. It's actually probably a little bit easier to play something extremely expressively and romantically.
Yes, yeah, it's much easier to be indulgent and very emotive than it is to just play something beautifully and sweetly and elegantly.
One of the elements of accomplishing that is that it has to be exactly in time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the metronome marking that you put 128, I think, is a really good one. I think in Beethoven's score or somewhere I've seen it as high as like 152.
Sure.
I wouldn't do it that quick. And you don't want to be too slow. Again, there's a long way to go. You kind of want to feel it in one almost. You want to make sure to have that kind of feeling of it just moving forward. So that's something that I would do when I practice. I would have it on at 128, and then I would divide that by 2 so that it's clicking just at the beginning of every measure, so you get a nice feeling of bigger phrase.
Yeah. So in terms of rhythm, I do see a few traps at the beginning, making sure that the dotted quarter notes are still 3 exact eighth notes in there.
Yeah.
Making sure that, in bar 86 that eighth rest is not too long. I can also actually see in bar 84 that those 16th notes could be quite rushed.
Yes. Yeah, and that's a tricky spot, just kind of finger-wise for us. So I would take the metronome down pretty slow when you're really focusing on these things. Make sure that the dotted rhythms are, like you said, 3 eighth notes, and that the eighth note is an eighth note, that it doesn't get too triplet-y. And then make sure that you're not compressing the 16th notes, playing them too quickly. 128's a nice quick tempo, but there's still plenty of time and no reason for it to feel rushed.
Yeah. I mean, we can get into score study right away with this particular excerpt because the rhythm is so important, and knowing what happens in the other parts is really going to help you with your rhythm here. So I can pull up the score. The score you can download for free off of IMSLP. You can listen to many recordings, right, Danny?
My personal favorite collection of the Beethoven symphonies are the old Cleveland Orchestra recordings with George Zell.
George Zell. He's a Beethoven genius.
Yeah, and the entire recording's great, and the principal oboist, Mark Lifshee, at the time is, I think, probably the most elegant, beautiful oboe player. Another favorite is a recording with my old teacher, John Furillo, playing in the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra with James Levine. That one's a little harder to find, but it's really great because they play very operatically with a huge range of color and emotion and dynamics. And so those are 2 favorites.
Awesome. Well, thanks for those recording recommendations. That's really helpful. And so you should listen to the recordings, absolutely. And then if you can, follow along with the score. And if you look at these rhythmic traps that we talked about in the score, you can see that if you can hear the other parts of the orchestra, particularly the strings, you'll be less likely to fall into those rhythmic traps. First of all, you don't want to compress because your first violins are playing running 16th notes, and they have to be able to fit all of those notes within the melody.
Yeah.
But if you look at the basses, cellos, and other strings, they're actually keeping the metronome for you. So you should be able to hear that.
Yeah, and throughout this entire excerpt, I think all the way up until the fermata, somebody has running 16th notes.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't take too much time.
No.
Otherwise things will fall apart. So it's very important to be considerate of your colleagues.
Right. Right. And it's a commentary on how it's written in this particular iteration of the theme as well. Beethoven is not allowing for any sort of indulgence, like you said. You notice that it says dolce and not espressivo. So I know, Danny, you wanted to talk a little bit about how that affects dynamics and phrase and character.
Yeah, so this is a little tricky, and this is something that comes up in audition prep across the board. How fanatically do you want to follow what's on the page? The vast majority of the time, it's important to do what's on the page. However, playing this in the orchestra, I would not play the printed dynamics. You have to kind of think about what the purpose of the dynamics are. So one of the first things to notice is that there is no dynamic at the first entrance. I just have dolce. And so I think that's really important to influence the entire excerpt.
It's hard to interpret because, like you said, there's no dynamic at the beginning, there's no direction at the beginning, and then 4 bars later you have so much specific information.
Yeah, and in the first phrase, for instance, all Beethoven is doing is showing you that the direction of the phrase is to that third B flat where the sforzando is printed.
Sure.
And so if I were playing this, I would imagine a crescendo. But just to make sure that the phrase goes all the way to that sforzando, and then after the sforzando, come away pretty much immediately, and then finish the phrase 2 measures later. I would not do a dramatic diminuendo after the sforzando, otherwise you won't hear the end of the phrase.
Yeah, I think what he's saying too, if you look at where the piano is written, that's an appoggiatura, and it's very likely that an instrumentalist may emphasize that note, and Beethoven is saying that he doesn't want the phrase to end that way, that the top of the phrase, like you said, should be at the B flat.
Yeah, the appoggiatura just inherently will be expressive. When I look at this excerpt, I have to look at the solo that we get later in the movement. Everything just kind of builds and builds and builds and builds. There's a big fermata and then it stops. And there's a wind chorale where the oboe is playing this melody at about half the tempo.
Yes.
And it's just this beautiful moment where everything it's like time stands still. And all of the information that we have in this small excerpt is in that bigger one. So it's like Beethoven took that and just kind of transplanted it into the smaller excerpt.
Sure. Can you show us how lightly you touch that sforzando B flat?
Sure. So I would probably start in the orchestra like a solid mezzo forte. Okay. Because there is a lot going on around you. And in audition, you can play a little bit more relaxed. So just something comfortable where you sound, your most beautiful.
Yeah, just that little lean. You add maybe a tiny bit of vibrato on the lean, and that's really all, and just a lot of intention, a lot of internal intention.
Yeah, and very clearly showing that the B flats go 1, 2, 3. It's.
Yeah, you're right. 1, 2, 3. I really like that.
And that's all you need to show, and then let the phrase relax. You don't have to really think of doing anything other than.
While we're talking about phrase, can you talk a little bit about the second sforzando that we see in bar 91?
Yeah, so this excerpt has kind of 3 distinct sections. Okay. That first solo passage that I just played. Then there's a middle section where you're not the solo. And then there's a third section we'll get to, but the section where you're not the solo has exactly the same phrase structure. So you want to show that the phrase is going to that sforzando as well with the repeated G's, starting at measure 89, you think. Go to the sforzando. And then with the measures before that, we talked a little bit about the eighth rests being tricky. I think when people play by themselves, they tend to make rests like that on the downbeat a little too long. So this is a section where you get out the metronome and just make sure that you're totally in time. So the first 3 measures, you want to make sure to come away from the rest. Da, 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 da. Don't play them all the same.
Yeah. And there's melody
Yeah.
happening somewhere else during that.
Yes. Yeah. Who has it? I think
Let's see.
the violins. Right?
Violins, right. And what you're doing is just helping them to keep that moving.
Yeah, and it's a part of the texture. It's not an important thing. So I would not play it forte. I would play it less than what has happened before.
Sure.
Again, most of the time you want to go with what's on the page, but if you come in and you're playing by yourself and you play this beautiful melody simply and sweetly, and then you play these repeated eighth notes as loud as you can, you'll sound silly. So
right.
So it's important to know the context and to show that.
Well, so we've talked about the first two parts of this excerpt. We can move to the third part of this excerpt, which starts with the 16th note scales, and then going into the fermata.
So this is a fun spot. The measure before the fermata is the only time where you can take time. What I would do if I were playing this in an audition is I would stay in time pretty much all the way up until the second beat of measure 96.
Okay.
It's not much.
You didn't even do much until the A flat, the top A flat there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You take a lot of time, but it's in a very small amount of time, if that makes sense.
And I also noticed that the fermato is quite short. It's just like a little wink almost.
Yeah. Yeah. You just kind of catch your breath at the end of all of the stuff like we saw in the score. Like you just kind of take a little pause and then you keep going and you finish the phrase.
And I noticed also how beautifully you came out of that fermata. You gave yourself the little breath and then you kept pushing the phrase forward. Nothing sank during that fermata.
Yeah, you want to make sure to keep the air support throughout the fermata. The music still keeps going even though you're sustaining. If you can put in some vibrato elegantly, do that, and you just want to kind of warm the color up. Like I imagine a crescendo there. Like I'll sometimes in a part at a spot like that, I'll put a crescendo with parentheses.
Okay, that's a good tip. Yeah.
Just so I think about it, and then you really need to be kind of elastic with the timing here. You're not to make something like this sound good. You can't just slow down and then speed up.
Yeah.
It's like driving a car. You have to accelerate and brake smoothly. Otherwise, it's really uncomfortable. So you take a little bit of time going into it, and then you take it back exiting the fermata, so that the A natural is a little bit longer than an eighth note would be in tempo, but it's pretty close to in tempo. This is a spot where like you really need to listen to recordings and see how people do it well.
Yes.
And figure it out for yourself so you can feel it and you can.
So that it's organic. Yeah, sure.
So as much as you can internalize it and have it feel natural, I think it's important.
Cool.
And then once you've exited the fermata, again, it's similar to the beginning, just nice and simple. Go to the trill. I added a nachschlag, which is the little lower grace note at the end of the trill. That's totally appropriate. You don't have to, but.
Yep. You trill to an F natural, but then for the nachschlag, you go down to a D natural.
Go down to the D, yeah. So I'll usually do like 2 or 3 shakes on the trill. And then for oboists, in that spot, you're using forked F instead of left F or regular F for the trill, just
okay.
Because you have to. This is a spot that you do practice when you're playing it in the orchestra. The second and third measures of the solo are tricky.
Sure.
And so you have to go through and decide what fingering you want to play for the F. So the two options are to use left F, this key here on my left pinky. This is the F key here on the right ring finger. So the left pinky takes it, and then I can play A flat with this key here when normally it's on the left pinky. And then coming from the note before is a D, so you have to use that left F, or you can use a forked F, which is raising the middle finger on the right hand. And then that's also an easier way to get to the A flat, and you play the A flat like normal and you use forked F. If you're most comfortable using forked F, do it, but the tone quality of it is really not great. I use left F as often as I can. It really kind of depends on the instrument. Some instruments, especially kind of intermediate and beginner instruments, the forked F is pretty wonky and just doesn't sound great. So I'll play regular F for you. Nice. No, the forked F is a little stuffier.
Yeah.
It's not as stable pitch-wise. It really is like a trill fingering for us. So if at all possible, I use left F. It's something, again, but it's not something that would really come through in an audition. So do whatever's most comfortable for you, but just make sure that you write it in and you're consistent with it. But, when I get a new piece of music, the first things I do are go in and mark breaths in important places. And then I go in and pencil in any alternate fingerings, which are primarily based around F for us. But I know we wanted to talk a little bit about the breathing in this.
Yeah.
And this is another case where playing it in the orchestra in many cases is easier than playing in an audition, because I would just leave some notes out.
But you can't do that in an audition.
Because you can't do it in an audition. Really, the only solution is to take a breath at the end of measure 85 into 86. You have the two eighths. Finish the phrase before beautifully. Take a quick breath in, nothing big. Play the next two measures, and then at measure 88, I would blow out right before the A flats. Blow out, get rid of the stale air. Right here, I would breathe out and get as much of that air out as you can.
Okay.
And you can play the 3/8 notes with almost no air inside. So like, and then the next measure in measure 89, take in a good full breath because you're going all the way to the end. So it's a very important thing to practice, just the planning out where you're going to get rid of air, and so that you can take a nice fresh breath.
Sure. Well, anything else, Danny, that you wanted to mention about this excerpt? I think there's a lot of things that
we touched on a lot for such a short thing. I mean, it's over before you know it. I think the most important things for me with audition prep are always practice with the metronome, so that you're totally solid in your rhythm. Use a tuner. I use a tuner all the time. I use drones. So with this, I would, it's in the key of E flat. I probably have a sustained E flat for a lot of it to listen. G in the first measure, make sure it's not too high. The B flats, repeated B flats, you want to make sure that they're up enough because they're the fifth. Just things like that. I'll practice it slowly. Listen to recordings. What you can do on the front end as far as like homework for you will serve you really well when you're auditioning. And then practice auditioning. So it's important to practice playing the excerpt when you're tired as well. Yeah, and it may seem like overkill, but I guarantee all of my colleagues have thought about everything that they have to play in this much detail.
Yes.
Hopefully yours do as well. And hopefully you do too, because it really shows in the final product.
Cool. Well, thank you, Danny. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, good luck, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah. Bye.